Hello and welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical trivia and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. Today, pre-romantic models of love. I was listening to a lecture on romanticism by Alain de Botton the other day, and it struck me as significant for the design of mythic European characters. The video is on YouTube and its link is in the show notes. De Botton suggests that certain features became connected to the concept of love during the Romantic period, which began in the 18th century and blossomed in the 19th. Before noting them, I'd just like to highlight how difficult it is to even think of the term romantic as being something that's disassociated from love. That difficulty, disassociating one set of ideas from the other, is what I'm talking about here. What do Ars Magica characters feel, which they describe as love? Romantic, when the term emerged, meant having something to do with the tales of chivalry. And so for the rest of this discussion, I'd note that romantic love harkens back to an imagined past in which chivalric love was in full bloom. The Romantics loved the medieval period as opposed to the classical and industrial periods, and Ars Magica, as a game that is based on the popular imagination of the Middle Ages, is covered in their fingerprints. It draws directly from their work, in that the idea that living at a time before antibiotics were invented was a lot more fun is the sort of daft thing that they believed and convinced everyone else of. They also rearranged their folklore, and we use this folklore as a source material in building mythic Europe, and that's why mythic European fairies have wings, the church is post-Augustinian, and there are winter covenants. It allows you to use romantic medievalist tropes. Romantic love is for the rich. No romantic hero has something as annoying as a job. In Ars Magica we see this influence on our characters in that it was one of the first games where you hunted monsters and stole their treasure that explicitly said the treasure was stage dressing and should be described with adjectives, not numbers. We've marched back from that a little with the mythic pound, but let's be honest, a lot of people really don't care about how much money their characters have. That's why the unit of account in Ars Magica, the mythic pound, is the average annual earnings for a peasant family. That's like running a modern-day RPG where the unit of currency isn't the American dollar, it's the average American family income, which is about $52,000 US. Romantics love a bit of nature. Nature's where dramatic stuff happens. As it happens, magi live out in nature because cities dim magic. Beautiful things are magical, fairies cluster around beauty, magical auras make things more vivid and thus more beautiful. Some beautiful things literally drip magical power you can bottle and keep for later. Romantic couples spend a lot of time together, work doesn't get in their way, practical things don't get in their way, and therefore magi are treated as if there's something wrong with them. They can't love people because they spend so much time closeted in their labs. Loneliness and love in the romantic ideal are opposites. This makes familiars a really odd idea. De Botton notes a classical concept of love, which has features that sound odd to modern people. The lover does not complete the beloved. The lover does not love the faults of their beloved. The lover particularly does not love the partner because of the partner's faults. Sexual union is not the highest expression of love. The lover loves the good parts of their beloved and wishes to nurture or instruct them to polish their superiorities of character and diminish their inadequacies. The lover and beloved take turns as instructor and student. De Botton, by the way, is far more humorous with all of this material. His lecture is well worth listening to. Since the love does not have sex as a necessary capstone, like romantic love, this doesn't require the lovers to complete each other, and it allows a person to be in multiple loving relationships within the one structure. One can love family members, one's spouse and one's friends, all within a single ideological framework of love, rather than having a series of differentiating frameworks. While de Botton was describing this framework, it reminded me sharply of House Totalis. Currently, they have a sort of agogic process of instructive sadism. I thought this might serve as an alternative philosophical framework for them. Then from there you could spread it out to other houses. Is the collegiate love of House Tremare like this? Do members of House Verditus hate being together because they cannot see the good in each other and so they wound each other accidentally with a million tiny slights. Do members of House Mercure, prone as they are to travel, and therefore they can't be constantly with their beloved, have a version of love in which loneliness and love are not antithetical to each other? I really enjoyed this talk because it gave a more nuanced view of the practical love of the Middle Ages. People loved each other and they wrote about it a lot, but they didn't mean then what we mean now, even though they used the same words. The Romantics used to suggest this was because medieval people had poorly developed sensibilities, using that terrible medieval idea that the best people can't handle crude things and are literally injured by them. The princess is hurt by the pea in her mattress because she's literally better, finer, and more sensitive than the gross people around her, like you. Actually, medieval people loved their wives and children. They just expected less from that love. I think classical descriptions of love allow us to write better stories to match Magi player characters whose lifestyle makes them, in some sense, very flawed as romantic protagonists. So much of classical love is visible. It's not hidden inside the character's head. Characters don't need to romantically understand each other without talking. Talking a lot in a strangely formal way is perfectly normal in the classical form of the novel. It makes for far better role-playing because it's acted and not intuited. People really were expected to ask how others felt, and to ask why, and to talk these things through. The idea that if you really loved someone, you would just be able to read it in their face or body language or soul is mercifully absent in classical literature, which lets us role-play characters who are so vocal about their feelings that they seem almost Shakespearean. Romantic love is considered stronger when it's reckless. Romeo and Juliet die within 4 days of things kicking off for them. Oh, so romantic. Honestly, I've always really disliked Romeo and Juliet as role models. Anyway, moving on. Classical novels are a lot more practical than this. And this allows us to set goals and craft stories. In classical love, money matters. Where people live matters. Doing certain things to make yourself marriageable isn't some sort of terrible, shallow thing. It just proves that your spouse isn't slightly dim, like Lydia Bennet. This is great for gamers, because those goals are earned by in-plot actions, and we can design stories around that, much like any other MacGuffin. Classical love stories are better for gaming than romantic love stories.